The annual town meeting is the opportunity for all electors in the town to question their representatives and receive updates on the past year's achievements. It starts with each committee chairman reading a brief report of the activities of their committees. Although members of the public can ask questions and raise points at the regular public sessions of all council meetings, there is a restriction on the level of response that can be made at that time. So now is the time for the public to speak.
Yes, sir. It says on the report, I'm Mr. Norman Harris, born and brought up in Clevedon. I'm on about the highways. I can see you have commented on the parking. You go down the triangle now outside the bank. There's 10 vehicles parked right up on the pavements even now. There is Melbourne Terrace up on the pavements, and the North Somerset Council saying we have to cut back costs. These pavements are getting damaged, something rotten that people can trip over. And the other thing I would like to bring up, which has happened to me twice now, I've been nearly knocked down by people in invalid carriages on the pavements. And they're going so fast now, I've only got to have somewhere to go, but I was always told a pavement was for pedestrians. And this is a four-wheeled vehicle going round now, and some of them are so mad. I would like to know if I got knocked down or a child, who is liable?
There were two points you made. The first one, I'll take the first one first, about parking. Absolutely right. You look all around the town, Old Street, wherever you go, there's wall-to-wall parking. People are completely disregarding the double yellow lines. That's the issue.
I did learn about the police, sorry. I was thinking the police report today, and they said it's a North Somerset Council thing. I'm not North Somerset, and they said it's a police thing. So now, who's you? Passing the buck.
The thing is, unfortunately, it's only the police can enforce double yellow lines. Unless you decriminalise.
Unless you have traffic wardens.
Yeah.
We haven't got.
Yes, we haven't.
We haven't got nothing now.
I don't think you've read in the press, and I don't think all of us as councillors here know the full detail, but apparently North Somerset Council and the police have got together and have got a new initiative, which I think I alluded to in the report, that there are going to be some, they're not wardens, I'm not going to call them wardens, there might be a PCSO, it might be somebody who is going to be able to monitor the situation a bit more. Now, that's all we've got at the moment we can do as a council, unless we decriminalise the double yellow lines, we can't, as a town council, do anything about it.
No, PCSO told me that this is the worst town in the country.
Clevedon is worse.
Clevedon's worse, he said. Portland's beautiful. He said, but Clevedon.
Well, unfortunately, it's the residents that are being disrespectful, unfortunately. So maybe we need to do something to try and encourage the residents to be a bit more respectful to the rest of the town, and not just be selfish and think, I'm going to park up there, I want to go to the cash point, I want to go and place the letter. You're absolutely right. We are well aware of the issues in parking in Clevedon, we really are. The second point, you talked about pavements. That's right, yeah? Yes. I think, my view is they shouldn't really be on those pavements, should they? That's my understanding, but I'm not an expert. So I'm not surprised the pavements are getting ruined by those scooters and also cars parking on there. As a town council, I don't think we do anything at the moment, but I think we're very aware of it, and all we can do is we can monitor the situation and try and try and talk to the police a bit more and try and get some enforcement of all this North Somerset initiative that's going on that we haven't got all the detail of as yet. But I'm worried about, you're right, you getting knocked over, all the children, that's terrible.
Who's liable?
Well, it doesn't matter who's liable, we just don't want it to happen, let's be honest.
No. Oh, well, fair enough.
But thank you for your point. Sorry I can't answer your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Normally we were going to have a chat about that later on, about the invalid carriages. Interesting point. but I think we need some answers from the police and North Somerset. So we're looking for...
Well, four-wheel vehicles should be on the roads, isn't there?
It's all right.
Just answering one question about invalid carriages, they should carry insurance.
Yes, it should.
They should all carry insurance.
They don't.
They should do.
Yeah, but I bet they don't.
That's answered my question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Just one thing I would add, actually, just before Christmas we were talking to the police at the Police and Community Together meeting, packed, and they often say that a lot of people parked on double yellow lines are blue badge holders. There's not a lot we can do about that. I think around Christmas we did a survey, and it was something like 70% of blue badge holders. But that doesn't mean we're going to give up.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you for your question. Can we deal with...
It was a question to do with
same thing.
transport lines, yeah, thank you. One thing I will reiterate, and I'm sure James probably shares my frustration, isn't it quite galling that we went through at considerable cost appointing a police commissioner who's supposed to be responsible to the members of the public? The members of the public have made their feelings very strongly known about parking enforcement in Clevedon, and yet we read in this report that the police decline to see it as a priority for the foreseeable future. Well, if you cannot complain to the police representative and they're not prepared to do anything, it begs the question, why do we bother with a police commissioner? Because quite honestly, they are supposed to respond to what the priorities the members of the public set, not what the police force think their priority should be. And I think this has been said so many times that I think is very sad. I know we've made great effort to try and speak to Sue Stevens on this issue, and I'm sad that she's not listened and actioned upon those requests.
I totally agree, Trevor, I totally agree. And also, the gentleman saying that actually it's well known that Clevedon is the worst offending town. That's absolutely appalling.
Trevor, with that, we'll probably come back on it. You remember you asked the question, I think, 6 months ago? Yeah. We then wrote to the Commissioner, and we had a response which was read out at full council. If you'd like a copy of that letter again, then I'll make sure that the clerk gives you one. Okay? Members of the public, anybody else would like to ask a question?
I had a question earlier on, which was asking about the oldest records that we have in Cllr.
I think the records go back to the 1890s, but I'm not sure.
Not quite in there.
Ah.
The eldest standard records we've got are the minutes, and that go back to 1972. But I have actually found stuff going back to 1962. So what else is at the bottom? I haven't. I mean, so we've got deeds and that in there, which go back to 17 something around. But
you said deeds or deeds?
deeds.
Oh,
Deeds for what? It's the 74 is from when the town council came.
Deeds for what? Property.
Property.
This
Property, Village Hall, Home Gardens, all the deeds are in the safe box. But there is an archive working group that are looking to sort the archive cover down. And they will be able to give you a full report of all the joys that they've found when they've done that.
Don't you want volunteers?
I will ask the chairman of the archive.
Well, the serious answer to that is we have decided that as many of those records have been held for a long time, and obviously this particular council is only going back to 1974, and very few of them are recalled with much regularity, that we would not go through scanning and sort of repackaging all the documentation unnecessarily. But obviously we want to try and reduce the space used as much as we can. So we're off-siting some of it, and we'll be looking at whether some of it needs to be scanned and some possibly sort of out-sorted, and maybe, you know, there are some records that can be discarded, but we want to keep as much as we can. And we're meeting Thursday, I think it is, to look at the next stage of that.
Yes.
It's a busy day, so.
Yeah.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to present members of the public?
Yes.
I know that our fellow councillors are looking forward to taking us to pieces, so I'm trying to keep the members of the public present. No? Okay, fine. Councillors, Joe, you put your hand up first.
Thank you. Well, a couple of observations over some of the things we've talked about tonight. And I'll give you this one as an example. This is planning committee. I was approached by one of my neighbours who asked me to help fill in an online planning application. I don't know whether anybody sat around this table has tried using the government portal. Did you have great success?
No.
Because I didn't have great success, and in trying to do it, I got so frustrated, I ended up ringing North Somerset Council, who also tried to access the file I was using, and they couldn't get into it either. And it suddenly becomes clear that North Somerset Council seem to be trying to distance themselves from this NSC portal planning thing, because apparently it's nothing to do with North Somerset Council at all. I'm told it's to do with central government. And the whole thing is such a minefield. In the end, I just gave up, and I suggested, in all honesty, that the poor neighbour takes all the relevant paperwork and everything else, and to visit Castlewood, present herself to the reception office and say, help. Because that was all I could think to offer for advice. But anyway, that's a quick one on planning. The other one is this. It's Tuesday tomorrow, like it's Tuesday most weeks of the year. And I don't know whether anyone else joins in thinking what I think, and that is what price recycling in our town. I know we read lots of things in North Somerset Life about how great we are at recycling, etc., etc. Aren't we all doing our bit for saving the whale and everything else? But has anybody stopped to look at the cost of how dirty and untidy our town is every Tuesday after the bin lorries have been around collecting this recyclable waste? I took some photographs on Southern Way last Tuesday, and it looked as though somebody had gone along there with a tipper truck chucking out rubbish as they drove down the whole length of Southern Way. And absolutely disgraceful. And I think that whilst on one hand we're congratulating ourselves on being so good at recycling, but what is the true cost to our town in its environment and the way it looks? I think it's pretty disgusting, and I think it's always as a consequence of what happens every Tuesday when we have recycling. I'm interested to hear what other people think.
Just wanted to comment on that really. I think that the recycling is important because it stops it going to landfill, which is very costly, but we do need operatives who are doing it to up their game a bit. That's the answer.
I do agree. I think on a Tuesday the town looks dreadful. I live in a little cul-de-sac, and even there's stuff all over. I live in a cul-de-sac. But unfortunately, I do also think that members of the public are a bit naive. We're told to put our recycling boxes out by 7:30 in the morning. If it's a windy evening, guess what? It blows all over the road before the operatives even got a chance to look at it. So I do think they maybe haven't got time to pick up every little bit, but I think members of the public do need to be more responsible about how they pack their recycling boxes as well, I think.
Thank you. David.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was concerned after the gales the other Tuesday, Monday, whenever it was, and I took the trouble to ring up the council, and they appreciate the problem we have with rubbish growing out, and I understand that every waste bin is going to have the equivalent of a hairnet supplied with it so that you can put over the top. Then the ball will be firmly in the residents' court then to keep the rubbish in. But as you say, people are naive, and when you see the way some of the boxes are packed, you do wonder how the poor chap ever sorts it out.
Very good, David. Carl?
Yes, I was just going to say that the other problem that we have encountered in some areas is where teams differ week on week with the recycling lorries particularly. Some are a bit less careful than others, and I know we've had one or two cases which we've reported of lorries going around the corner with the flaps open and the rubbish does blow out. The waste team is quite appreciative of calls reporting that if that is a persistent problem, because they will either reprimand the teams or swap them around or whatever, and you find then that often things do improve the following week.
Before I hand to you, Graham, one thing as far as I'm concerned, it is our jobs as councillors. If we see this happen, all we've got to do is pick up the phone and phone or Somerset and get them to come and finish the job they started. If it's a member of the public, you can always come to the office. But don't just go around moaning about it, do something about it. I'm not getting at you, Trevor, I know you said it before. Okay, fine. Yes, please.
I'm following up on Councillor Shopland's comment. It's always possible to have more than one box. So you can have newspaper, glass, tin, plastic, cardboard in separate boxes, and they do stack on top of each other. And if you put a brick in the top one, it stops all the rubbish flowing out overnight anyway. So we can have more than one box, and that will alleviate the terrible mix-up that the operatives have trying to segregate into their various sections on the lorry.
Anyone else want to answer that? Okay, next question.
Thanks, yeah. Just a couple of small points actually. Graham, just on the last but one paragraph in your report, you talked about potential development, which we obviously looked at. Do you mean residential development, don't you?
I did indicate that the North Somerset target of 14 up to 20.
That's what we talked about. Yeah, well, you talked about residential. I just wonder whether you might put that word in there rather than just leave it as potential development.
Your attention to detail as ever.
Absolutely. The other point, Carl, for you. Last year there was, for the first time, the courts have been used quite regularly because they were the new surrounds were put on. This year is the first year of full operation of the tennis courts. I wonder whether, obviously you've got a lot of stuff you put in your report, but I was anxious to publicise the fact that these courts are now for the first time for full season up and running, and I think it's important that people use them. They are there, they are presently free of charge, and I just wondered if you obviously, if you'd reiterate that for me.
Well, I think that's a valid point. I mean, I know you, Graham, and a number of others put a lot of work into getting those up and running after North Somerset weren't so keen in continuing with them. And we do need members of the public to use them and think of our tennis courts as sort of first rather than last reserve, so that they are getting the use that the expenditure on them deserves. So I think that's probably all I can say, but we'll know next year with a full year of usage just how much they are used.
David, your observation.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you, this council is conscious that there are people in need, and I was not aware that we had given up looking at toilet provision in the town. We are, as far as I'm concerned, still investigating the possibility of some of the toilets that formerly existed. We have not stopped looking. We are looking. There are problems. There are quite considerable problems. But the council is still looking to see if we can provide additional toilet accommodation within the town.
Yes, I think just we need to develop that a little bit, because we need to be aware that the pier are getting on with the work to provide toilets actually on the pier, and they are working quite hard. So by late summer, early autumn, that will be complete. They will then, I assume, cease to clean and maintain the toilets opposite the pier. They've only been doing that because there are no other toilets around for those people on the pier. So we do need to think pretty sharpish of what we're going to do when the pier decides that they won't do that any longer and that they have their own toilets. And to just go back to the healthmatic toilets in the square, it was a bit problematical to start with because people didn't know how to use them, they messed around with them, they did try cheating by, holding the door open for people, until they finally learned that actually the door opens, it unlocks itself after 15 minutes. So if you cheated and you haven't put your 20 pence in, you can be revealed to all. In fact, recently I did actually pluck up courage and start using them and put my 20 pence in, and they are very well maintained, I have to admit. Nobody seems to mess around as far as I know, but I'm naive. They are pretty vandal-proof, and they are kept very clean and functioning very well. So, so far so good, but as David says, we've got a long way to go.
Thank you very much. Any more questions?
Just one for the council, Geldart. You say about the potholes appearing in regular recurrence. I did phone up the council, as you suggested, reference Elton Road, where there's a gap between where they, from the 6 ways, which they did a lovely job, then they left a huge great gap down to where the junction with the beach.
Yes.
I was threatened with that was going to be done in January. I think they must have missed their target somewhere.
Which year?
Yeah, well, I'm not quite sure. I thought it was this year, but I may be wrong. I wondered if that could be chased up again. Because I have chased it up once and I was threatened with January.
I've got a few things I need to talk to our representative about, so I'll add that to the list. But thank you very much. And as I said, I would always urge councillors to...
I wondered whether they may be keeping it to then to Bovington for a campaign. I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
One thing on that, it would also be quite useful because it's outside the jurisdiction of both North Somerset Council and Clevedon Town Council. People could occasionally ring the Highways Agency and complain about the state of the motorway going up from Clevedon. If anyone's tried to attempt that with anything under a 4-wheel drive, it's in a pretty bad state. I know they're doing some work, but I think they need to be prevailed upon to do a bit more.
All the traffic on the motorway.
We have an assembled gathering of wise, intelligent-looking people gazing at us, right? And are there any suggestions from the floor, other than councillors, how we could improve this meeting and make it more interesting to get more people to come and tell us where we went wrong?
Cups of tea and coffee.
We're all in May then, end of story, all right?
I can say we have got some lemon drizzle cake, which we're more than happy to get out of. It would have been come out earlier on, but it was still in there. We have had one question, as members probably are aware. We do allow people to email questions in for this meeting if they're unable to attend. We have had one question emailed in, and the question is, are Clevedon Town Council supportive of the suggestion that the path through Firwood, linking Thackeray Road and Hydale Road, should be reclassified from pathway to highway? To explain, she goes on, if my understanding is correct, as a pathway, the path is currently looked after by the Parks and Open Spaces at North Somerset Council. This is a department which has a very limited budget, such that it's highly unlikely that any improvements will ever be made to the pathway. Furthermore, sweeping and tree safety checks and maintenance are ad hoc, generally following notification of problems by path users. I understand that if the path was reclassified as part of the highway, maintenance of the surface and safety checks on the trees would be more automated. In addition, I understand that the funding of highway section at North Somerset Council would make improvements to the pathway far more likely. Briefly, the current problems are the pathway is often slippery due to inadequate drainage. Debris is washed onto the path by rainwater rather than off it. The surface is disintegrating and children easily and regularly trip on it. It is too narrow for a parent to walk and hold 2 children's hands, essential because of the 2 points above. It is eroded on the side such that dangerous dips exist, combined with the points above means children can easily fall off the edge or adults go over on their ankles. The bottom of the path is always completely covered in mud when it gets trampled into the school, and the current state of the path leads itself well to negligent dog owners and horse riders. This is a well-used path not only for the school but for Castlewood and the bus stop near to Castlewood. I have actually followed this up with North Somerset and will do a full response back to the lady, which I will report to council when I have the full documentation.
Jane, Transport and Highways.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I've got interest because I'm on the Transport and Highways Committee, but also because I believe that is a really important cut through from higher up in Clevedon down through to the town centre. People do use it for schools, be it St Nicholas Charter School, be it the secondary school. And I know exactly what she's talking about. The path is like a sort of tarmacy sort of archway, and on the side is like mud and twigs and goodness knows what. So it's not a suitable path. It's quite narrow. Also, there is a massive sign saying no horse riding. Guess what? There are always horses going up and down that area, and really North Somerset should enforce that, i.e. no horse riding. And I know there's been a lot of angst about that, and horse riders are very polite to pedestrians when they are walking through the woods. I would totally support this. I think it's a fantastic part of Clevedon that we could actually make a lot more use of by treating it in the way it could be used. And I think we should support that.
How about cyclism?
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you do that?
I can do that.
That could form part of the safer routes to school.
Yeah, absolutely. All linked in. All linked in.
Yeah, no, it's not a question, Mr. Chairman, it's an observation again. The original path through the fir woods followed from the end of Old Park Road, the unmade bit, around and then down by where Wing Commander Turner lives, and comes out opposite the school entrance, and the path then continued through the school into Old Street. And if you go and look at that, there is a curved footpath on one side of that road. That was the bridleway which some of us have tried to keep by driving through. Now I am not sure whether the path you are talking about is a designated footpath, because it was not created as a footpath. The tarmac was put down to cover the sewer that comes down through there, because the sewer was always being washed down by the rain, and that is why it's semicircular on top. So the first thing I think is to find out through the clerk is whether that is a designated footpath. It may not be. And then if you wish to create it, we'll have to set about getting it on the register. But as I say, the original path was the bridleway.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you.
Well, by a strange coincidence, I walked past the top of just today because my car was being dealt with, and I had heard a complaint about it, so I had a good look at it. And I was actually quite surprised from the top what condition the condition it was in. I thought it didn't look too bad at all. There are an awful lot of branches which could have been tidied up, and it may be we could ask the one of Madam Schnotty and her woodworking team if they could do some clearance. I didn't walk down it, but I did have a good look at it, and I thought, considering people are complaining,
the top is not so bad.
I was only looking at the top.
Yeah,
so you get
it gets darker.
Chairman, I do think David's point is a valid one, that as someone who lived up there for many years, but I don't know that he's officially designated place, so we need to look at that. One of the key points there of the question, I think, has been missed, which is I think it's slightly disingenuous of North Somerset to suggest that if we designated a transfer from one committee to another, suddenly a miraculous amount of money will become available. I don't actually believe that, call me a nasty old cynic, but I'm not sure that it will suddenly become available. I think we need to find out the detail of the path and ask North Somerset if it is indeed the responsibility of their highways area as a proper path to get something done about it. But I don't think just transferring things about internally and all the admin that entails will necessarily release funding that hitherto has appeared to
physically unavailable.
Yeah, just a small point, Chairman, in answer to Linda. I was written to, as were I think other Waltham councils quite recently about that path. Some work was done on it following that correspondence, which is obviously why it's in a somewhat better state than it might normally be. But as was said in the letter, I don't know if it's by the same lady that wrote the other letters, it is obviously very ad hoc at the moment, so I would fully support any initiative to permanently improve the situation.
I think we just have one point. I think we do have, I mean, Linda makes a very fair point about the condition, but I think also we do just need to think every now and again that patterns of walking, driving, other things do change. And we tend to try and just look at the condition of things relative to their usage and see whether they need repairing or not. Sometimes it may be that we need to say, as Carol inferred, that if this is a route that school children are using regularly, it might be that we do need that upgraded, and that does form part of the designated routes to and from schools, and then additional funding streams are sometimes available.
There are going to be 100 extra children in St Nicholas Chantry. It's a fair bet that some of those are going to walk up and down that path.
The path we're talking about, is this the path that goes off from Hydell?
Yes.
Underground. There is a sign on there that says public footpath. If you have a look right on the corners or one of the path, the sign there saying, well, I walk the dog up there.
We're talking about Norman, the upper part in the fir woods.
Yes, but I
It
just
goes to
wonder
the
if
first
it goes
level.
across. Because it goes over along the Hydell Road, which has got the slab cut
That
out.
path used to
where
go
it
round,
goes
used to follow the road round.
No, with
When the
that,
TA were in their prime, they used to drive down.
transport and highways, and the Jane will have
I
a
would
site
say
visit
that.
for that. One thing we have heard is that there will be money available after the 1st of April for highways. So can I just ask councillors to look around their areas and see what roads need work doing? Because I'd like us to then get our request and put in anybody else.
Yeah. There is a point on that, Mr Chairman. I complained back some potholes in Beaconsfield Road. They have, in theory, been repaired, but the repairs are so atrocious that it's worse than when they started. And I think that the thing we have to get on board of is the standard of repair to potholes, which at the moment is just a shovel of tarmac and thrown from a lorry hoping to hit the hole. And that's not good enough. I'm exaggerating there, but we really want to check on the quality of the repairs that are done.
Also,
So any fool can spread tarmac.
there does seem to be a peculiar issue with North Somerset where we are periodically told that they can no longer cut out and seal around holes. Clearly that's not afflicting other parts of the country in the same way, and therefore repairs are lasting longer. I serve on North Somerset in East Nicodemus, and they've just done a repair by the fire station in Pill, which it is about a fourth repair of the same hole. And that is because they're not being cut out and sealed around. And I think we need to be quite specific in asking that attention to detail at that level is given, because otherwise they're just coming back again and again and again, and that's not saving anybody's money.
There is an answer to that. Go back to the old Clevedon Urban District Council and have a roadwork.
I knew we'd have trouble tonight, was
If you wouldn't like the fire, the steamroller is still about.
Ever had a family before when around your local councillors?
Quite so many cars.
Fine, thank you very much. Are there any more questions?